And welcome, everybody. It is time for one of our great online town hall meetings. My name is John Anderson. I am Director of Media for Nebraska Firearms Owners Association. And joining me on screen is NFOA President Trish Harold. Trish, how are you?
Good evening, everyone. Hi, John. Good to see you again.
Good to have you along with us. And in just a few moments, we will include Senator Brewer on screen. Real quick, we just wanted to welcome everybody. If you are catching this live, the best part about one of these live online town halls is you get to interact. So go ahead and get those comments, those questions in on the live chat if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. If you are catching us on Twitter, this is still going live right now on our Twitter page. However, due to the technological constraints, we cannot see your questions in real time. We can field them and address them later on when this is over with. But if you want your question answered directly, then we ask two things. Number one, get it in on the live chat. And also, please keep it pertinent to what we're discussing. We will try to get everything covered. Of course, we can't guarantee anything, but we'll do our best. So real quick here. Trish, is there anything else that I need to mention before we bring the senator in?
No, I'll just reiterate, really these online town halls are a way for Nebraska citizens to connect with NFOA and, of course, the senators who are bringing forward these bills that are so important to us. And your questions about the bill's particulars, how you can get involved, how you can support constitutional carry, all those are welcome. And we really look forward to answering all those this evening.
Exactly. And also, we do understand this is football night. So those of you that took your time to join us instead of watching the college national championship, we really appreciate your priorities. We have ours, I think, in the right place. If Nebraska was playing, of course, we would have scheduled a different night. But we appreciate all of your time out there for engaging with us as well. So real quick here, let's bring Senator Brewer on screen with us. And Senator, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm trying to keep track of two bird dogs while I'm on the line here, and they're kind of wanting to make up for lost time today. So forgive me if on occasion you see a dog go by.
Well, same in my case. If you happen to see a golden retriever in the background, I'll do my best to ignore her too. All right. So I think what we want to start off with is just kind of the nuts and the bolts. The bill that you introduced this year is not the same as what we had last year. So would you just go through what LB77 does say and, of course, what it does not say?
All right. Well, let's start with the not part, because if you remember last year, the challenge we had is we tried to work with the police unions, and that's what generated the amendment. We felt that we had a reasonable compromise. We weren't happy with it, but we thought that at least it was a way of getting our foot in the door and getting constitutional carry, not exactly perfectly what they wanted. But what happened was this process of working with the Omaha Police Department, primarily Lincoln never did work with us, resulted in really the worst of both scenarios. The Second Amendment folks weren't happy. The law enforcement wasn't happy, and one thing led to another. And in the second round of voting, because if you remember what happened was, we trusted Senator Lathrop, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, that he would give a fair hearing, and that if we stood down our numbers and they would then exec on the bill and take a vote. Because if they take a vote, then we can immediately ask for a poll motion, take the floor. If we don't have that action by the Judiciary Committee, it just sits there, and we have to wait 20 some days before we can even pull it to the floor. So all of that shifted everything right. The longer we're in that body together, the more dislike there is amongst everyone, and the harder it is to get things done. So consequently, we ended up after the filibuster for the poll motion and the filibuster on the first round for 8 hours, filibuster again on the second round. When it came to a vote, we lost by 2 votes. That was controversial because we had a number of Republicans that sat on the fence. We had one Lincoln Republican who voted against it. And as a result, we lost. And we actually had a number of Democrats that voted for it. So consequently, we sat down and figured out that we really weren't gaining anything by what we were trying to do with the Lincoln and Omaha Police Department. They were never going to be happy. And so we just simply did a clean bill, a clean constitutional carry. And that's the bill that became LB77. Now, obviously, we are going to have the Lincoln Police Department and Omaha police unions working against us, but we don't feel that that's that big a factor, quite frankly. We think this is still very doable, but to do that, what we have to do is make sure that we have a good, hang on here, I got to let me, hey, come here. All right, so what we need to do is have a good showing at the hearing, because if we don't, then that just simply gives them the impression that this is not a big deal and people are not that passionate about it. And that's the last message we need to give them right now. We want them to feel just as concerned about the people that are supporting the Second Amendment as they were when we had red flag and assault weapons ban and the other things in the Capitol. So that's why this year, even though I trust Senator Wayne, the new chair of Judiciary, we're still going to, if anybody's interested, again, they don't have to speak. Their presence alone is invaluable. It sends a message. But the ones that do speak, we need them to be, clear, concise, to the point. Don't need the same thing over and over again. We just need to come in there and talk about, and that's probably the tactic that we're going to need the Second Amendment groups to go through. Is we need to address training. We need to address some of the challenges by having different laws in different towns and never knowing for sure what law is in that town when you travel through. There's a risk that you can lose your ability to own, purchase, or have a firearm just because of things you don't even know. This bill makes it clean across the state. Same rules for everybody. Lincoln and Omaha can't come up with their own special rules. And I think that's huge. Now, obviously, that brings Lincoln and Omaha directly in opposition to us. That's okay. It's still doing the right thing. So this year, in a perfect world, Senator Wayne has already agreed to give us the date we want. And I don't know that we want the first day. The committee is just getting to know each other, working out the kinks. I don't know if that's the day you want to have your bill of the year. So we're probably looking at the second day of hearings to be on constitutional carry. I believe they will exec within a day or two. And the speaker has already promised to bring it to the floors as soon as it's out of committee. Now, we have a committee that I believe will vote it out. Unlike the past, where that committee has always been a 6-2 Democrat committee, this year is a 5-3 Republican committee. So I think our chances of getting it out are very good. And that turns up the timetable quick. And that's the thing that folks are going to have to remember is we may have to ask you to go from coming in and speaking in committee hearing to actually being in the balcony. And that may not be more than maybe 10 days, not very far apart. So that's kind of the timeline we're looking at. I expect to see that bill on the floor of the legislature for first round debate within a couple of weeks of it being heard in committee. And that's, again, just kind of a little bit on scheduling. And if the last 2 days are an example, they're filibustering everything we do. And of course, that then delays everything some. But they're going to run out of gas at some point. You cannot filibuster everything that comes before this body. Now, we also have abortion. We also have school choice. We also have voter ID. I mean, we have a lot of bills. Voter ID will probably be heard the day before or the day after constitutional carry. So that Capitol is going to be a very busy place. And again, it's going to force them to do back-to-back filibusters. That's a hard thing to do. And right now, they really just have Hunt and Kavanaugh and a few others that are kind of leading that charge. And they're not the warriors that Adam Moorfield and and Lathrop and all those guys are. You know, we got rid of a lot of anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment folks last year. Matt Hansen. I mean, you run down that list. Patty Pansy Brooks. There's a lot of folks that left last year that have cleared a path for us this year and an opportunity. Plus, last year we had rhinos. I believe everybody with an R in front of their name this year is a Second Amendment supporter. They're going to have to prove me otherwise, but early signs are good that they're going to do the right thing.
All right. We are getting a lot of folks out there that are asking the same question as far as the date. Now, of course, the date is not set yet. If you get the date that you had mentioned earlier, which would be the second day, which day would that be, Senator?
Boy, I'm afraid if I go to my calendar, I may lose you here. It would probably be the week after Martin Luther King Monday. So that'll be the week that we set on lock in the hearings. This will be a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because that's what the government committee meets at and judiciary. So I would just roughly around the 25th, 6th, 7th, right in that time range is going to be pretty close. Again, you have to be flexible, give or take a day or two. We probably won't do it on a Friday because normally that's a hard day to, have folks come in and go really late. And this will be a late one. I'm guessing it'll be a Thursday is my best guess. And that we will probably try and do voter ID on the Wednesday.
All right. So we will keep our eyes and our ears peeled for that official date once it gets scheduled. But
technically we didn't even have committees until today because of the controversy with the committee on committees and establishing who's on what committees and the liberals pitching a fit over the deal. And now we're in a little better position. The committees will need to meet, select a vice chair. Once that's done, then we can start doing scheduling. So we're kind of in the building blocks right now, but we'll know probably within a week, and we can get that out to you to share.
Okay, that'll be awesome. And folks, you can rest assured that NFOA and several others will be getting that date out just as soon as we know it. Within minutes of the time that we learn it, we'll get a post out and let people know when that is scheduled. So, all right. I know we had a few other questions that came through, Trish. You've been kind of keeping track of those better than I have.
Yeah. So a few questions that came up besides the date, which everyone's really excited about, was already answered. Senator Brewer did a great job kind of discussing the composition of the committee having changed dramatically. And then, of course, the body at large with regards to the support that we're going to need to get things started here. So one interesting question had to do with a specific senator, which was Senator McKinney from North Omaha. My recollection during the debate and during the filibuster, he articulated very clearly just how powerful this bill was in regards to his constituents and his concerns with regards to, the freedoms to be able to walk in and be able to say, be in a safe space with regards to, having a tool available to them for their own personal safety and not to get arrested simply for exercising their right to bear arms. How do you feel about Senator McKinney this year?
Great question. I feel good about him. If we do a hard count, we know we got 32 Republicans. Now, we lost Senator Geis last year on that vote. Now, I think we will get her back, but that is being optimistic to say that without actually getting eyeball to eyeball with her. Now, obviously, anybody that's a constituent of hers, I would highly recommend that you continue to stress to her the need for us to have constitutional carry. The count comes up at 32. If we lose one, which we might, I would like to think everyone will, but again, I don't know. Senator Geis has run for mayor of Lincoln. If I was her, I would do a head count and figure out that well, come on, get out of the way, you guys. The count of Second Amendment gun owners as opposed to the police union is not a good trade. I would stick with the Second Amendment if I was her. But that needs to probably be expressed to her so that she stays where she needs to be, and that's with us. So if we go with the 32, we have to roll one Democrat over. Now that's going to be hard to do normally, but I believe McKinney will come over, and I believe Wayne will come over too. I think we've got one to spare, but I'd sure like to have 3 or 4, but I don't know if any of the others will or not. It's hard to say. I think there's potential for it because a lot of the trial attorneys, which we have more of this year, see the value in constitutional carry. So I wouldn't write anybody off except the crazies that we know will never be there. But I think our chances are good of bringing McKinney over and Wayne. Wayne's going to keep his cards pretty close to his vest because he's the chair of the committee that's hearing the bill, so he can't step out and be too obvious on things. But McKinney, I think, will be there. It helps his community, and he knows it. And what a wonderful change from having Ernie in that district to him, because we would have never got Ernie to help us in any way.
Yeah. So we had a great comment from William Feely on our YouTube channel about the many citizens in Lincoln that are 2A supporters. And I want to commend William for pointing that out. And I think that's probably one of the most important things that we need to stress during this legislative session. We cannot take for granted that our elected officials are as informed or as empowered yet, especially our newly elected, and even our folks who have served us for quite a long time. If they don't hear from us, it creates concern for them. And we need to not only support ourselves, but we need to support them with a overwhelming majority communicating that they're for this bill, that they are for constitutional carry. And, several years ago, when we were ramping up to stop the assault weapons ban and to stop the red flag law, and we really woke up Nebraska with getting 400 people or more to come to the state capitol to testify. It's that level of energy. It's that level of commitment. And I think one of the things that's challenging is we sure rally for things that we need to fight against, but are we as ready to fight for things that we want? And we cannot take for granted that this awesome common sense bill is going to pass without the same volume of our voices supporting it.
And the other thing I'd like to stress is that I don't believe the planets will ever align to get as many pro-Second Amendment folks in the body, with people willing to give up priority bills and champion causes and get this bill where it can actually become law. So this is the year. I don't want to, look back and say, man, we were so close if we would adjust. I want to say, hey, not only did we get it, but we got it by a good margin. And it will be law by the time next year rolls around.
Yeah, very, very true. And yeah, going back to what you had said earlier about some of the senators who did not support the bill last year and may or may not this year. I can remember being in the gallery during the first floor debate and hearing, and I can't remember which senator it was. I know it was an Omaha senator saying that they had not received any correspondence from anybody saying that they wanted this. They how they didn't have any proof that Nebraskans wanted such a bill to pass because nobody had contacted them. Now, I'm quite positive that they had been contacted by several opponents of the bill. But if you live in a district where there's a senator who you don't think is going to support this bill, let's at least take that talking point off the table. Contact them officially, do it in an email, send them a letter. Make sure that it's on record that you asked that senator to please support LB77 this year, so they don't have the ability to say, well, I haven't heard from anyone in my district that wants this.
Yeah,
that's super important.
And those emails, snail mail, whatever you decide to do is the difference. It makes them decide that, this is where I need to be on this issue. We'll know as the debate develops. I think that it will come out of committee. I'm not that worried about committee. And why do I say that? Well, as of today, I think we're at 27 co-signers or sponsor. 25, we need to do a poll motion. Well, to pass the bill, you need 25, but of course, our obstacle is always the 33. Now, that's assuming they can put up the fight to go 8 hours and we don't call the question. So, I mean, there's other tactics but again, that just gets us through one round. That doesn't get us through three. And they'll come back in the next round like they did last year, but that's okay. It does get us to the point we can have people show their colors. Now, the committee will show theirs early because we'll have the vote out of committee. But the floor debate, you can see who weighs in and speaks against it and all. Traditionally, it's ran pretty much down party lines, with the exception, like you saw last year, of McKinney and possibly Wayne. But that's okay. If I got two of them and keep the Republicans, were there. If I keep the two of them and all but one Republican were there. But what happened when I went around to get co-sponsors, it was some of the Omaha freshman senators. Cout was one of them who balked and said, well, I don't know, the police union talked to me and they're concerned. And I want to just pull her aside and say, listen, this is not that hard to figure out. There is nothing we can do that will cause the police unions to say, yeah, we'll get behind that. We will. I said, in a perfect world, no one gets a gun in their world. And so you can't let their comments be the reason you don't vote for this bill. But anyway, I just simply said, all right, you think on this. Now, tomorrow morning is our NRA breakfast at the Capitol. And I'm going to be hoping to see a lot of them there. I'm going to talk to the NRA about pressuring them, getting mailings out specifically to those who are Republicans who didn't sign on to the bill, but also, some of the Dems that we think could possibly, be there for us. So we're going to hit it from every angle possible. I'm going to go with any organization who is a supporter of constitutional carry, and we'll use them as needed.
Yes, we will take all the help that we can get, provided that it's actual help. We all know that last year there were a few organizations that decided at the last minute to pull their support out from under you, and I'm glad that we weren't one of those. But
too.
So let me ask you this, Senator, because I know that you remember several of the objections that came during the filibuster, the ones that were honest objections to the bill anyway during the filibuster. And there's a reason why NFOA does not put out a form letter, because we all know that form letters don't resonate the same in your office or any of the other 48 senators' offices as an actual just typed out email or typed out and hand signed letter, whatever it is that comes from the heart. And so it's not about whether or not there are typos or if things are worded correctly or perfectly, as long as it's actually a real Nebraskan that's reaching out to their governing body. So if somebody is just looking for a little bit of help based on some of the objections and then the reasons why this is a good bill to pass, can you just put out a few of the points that people might want to include in their own words in a letter?
Well, the concept that we hear, of course, is that nobody should be able to own a gun if they haven't gone through training. This is a tactic that's a fallback, and so training is a part of it. If you write, include any thoughts you have on that. If you can also share any personal situations or anything that you can put into words to help them to understand why it's such a important priority for you. But you're right, when you speak from the heart, it's worth so much more than just those form letters. I mean, the form letters, they're still getting correspondence and it's still supporting what we're trying to do here. But when you send a letter and you don't have to give your address, but tell the town you're from. I mean, that's always valuable, because then it isn't something generic. Because most of the hate mail I get, nobody will sign it. Nobody will put their town on there because they want to know where it come from. This is something good we're trying to do. So don't hesitate to share that, because it does help them to know that it's a real person that wants this bill made into law. we're going to try and get as many of our sheriffs to weigh in across the state as we can. We don't want this to be an anti-law enforcement issue, and it shouldn't be, because a lot of folks are there to help law enforcement by being armed. The good guy with a gun that stops the bad guy with a gun. So, just remember that real world stories are probably the most valuable single thing you can put in the correspondence.
I'd like to add to Senator Brewer's points as far as law enforcement. I mean, we've worked with law enforcement agencies across our state. I have spent a lot of time with the Omaha Police Officers Association. I have talked to a few members of the Lincoln Police. One of the things that's really interesting is timing is everything. And unfortunately, there's been so much work done and bills passed and changes to our criminal justice system and that have caused incredible problems for our law enforcement brothers and sisters. That creates a tremendous amount of frustration where they're putting away the real bad guys, and then the next week that guy's out doing a bad thing again. And the number of personal stories that they have of seeing crimes escalate, where eventually someone they picked up weeks and months before is now being charged with criminal murder and incredible crimes of violence. So one of the things that we look towards as law-abiding gun owners is we do support law enforcement. They have an important job in our society. We ask them to do the tough job, and we as gun owners may look towards looking at legislation that is currently being put forward, say by other senators, that might better equip our law enforcement brothers and sisters with better tools in their toolbox, so that they don't feel they're losing such a huge tool with regards to the permitting process that we have here, that somehow they're able to combat crime because we all walk around with a card in our pocket. Maybe we can offer them the support they need to get their job done in a better way, and then there'd be more balance to this conversation, because right now they probably feel they're losing when really they're not losing, and we can help them gain something elsewhere.
No, I think that's a good point. I needed the fraternal order of the police, and I had an opportunity to sponsor a bill for them. And what it is to buy 1,400 vests for the Department of Corrections. For everyone that works at the Department of Corrections that has one-on-one contact with inmates. And so what happened was they didn't have the money. These vests are very specific, and they're made to prevent stab wounds. They probably would help in a case of a shooting, but it's designed for stab. And so by doing that, I held out that carrot to the fraternal order police, and I think that put us in a good position. The state patrol needed some things with their contracts done, and I helped with that. And so I'm doing everything I can to show that I'm a friend of law enforcement as much as I can be, but when you oppose constitutional carry and your reason for that is simply because of your inconvenience, and you got places like St. Louis and Kansas City that seem to be able to get by fine, then I don't have any compassion for Lincoln. It's more of a personal thing for them. It isn't about whether or not it makes the city more safe or not. As a matter of fact, I think the sheriff, who wasn't a supporter over the past year for Lancaster County, I think Terry did a lot of research and found out that the places that got constitutional carry had no increase in their crime. And so I'm hoping that he will, set out this fight, and that, we primarily have Lincoln and Omaha unions as those that are in opposition to it.
All right.
Yeah, and those are, really important. People can do a simple search on the internet for how to support constitutional carry in your state. There are a ton of great resources that you can find about, states that have passed it, that have been in place for the last 10 years, and those most recent, who have passed it. And the key indicator is causation and correlation are two different kind of statistical things. And you got to be very careful, because the anti-gunners love to use correlation and make that seem as if, there's more guns, there's more crime. No, there's more guns because there's more crime. We're responding to the crime going up, thus we become armed. So it's the chicken before the egg argument. And for folks who are anti-gun, they'll never want to admit the fact that they're using statistics in a bad way. But there's a lot of good information online to help you draft your personal message as well, to help educate senators, because not everyone is as informed as Senator Brewer.
And understand, during the debate, you'll have them go on and on about things, and people get angry and upset because they're saying, "How come guys aren't jumping in and correcting them?" And part of a filibuster is to kill time to kill a bill. So if you jump on there and you start jabbering and going back and forth with them, you are burning time off your bill. You're killing your bill. And so don't panic if you hear them on the mic, because they will carry on. They will lie, cheat, and steal to get what they want. And what you got to do is just bite your lip and understand the purpose of that. If we were trying to sell the bill like we're going to be in committee, then hey, it's all game on. But in a filibuster that's designed to eat time to kill the bill, we let them go, because if you do the math, if all 17 Democrats, which they won't, maybe 15 minus a few more, there's probably 10 hardcore they're going to go against it. They can only speak 3 times, and that means they can burn up 4 hours. They have to burn up 8 hours. They can't. Unless we help them, they can't do it. So don't panic when it gets to the floor if you hear them say a lot of bad things and we're not back punching them in the nose on stuff, because we don't want to help them complete a filibuster and force us to 33. Because if we can call the question before we get to the 8-hour mark, then it's a 25-person vote, and we're solid there.
Awesome.
And I'm glad that you explained that, because that was one of the questions that I had as I'm the more of this that I do, the more I learn about the legislative process, and I'm learning as we go along here. And so thank you for explaining that, because that was something that didn't make a lot of sense to me a year ago that now makes perfect sense to me.
And also be aware of the fact that what they did last year is they went and threw a bunch of amendments on the bill to jam it up, because then they could talk through all these amendments. So what we did to keep that from happening is we amended our own bill. We threw in the amendments, so now we can control that agenda. And so we're using every possible weapon in the arsenal here to get this bill through. But the one thing we can't do is have that emotional, direct contact from people to the senators to get them to understand the importance of the bill and how it would impact their lives.
All right. And I haven't looked over at the questions a whole lot, Trish.
I've been having a wonderful opportunity of chatting back and forth with all these folks, and we were discussing the training thing. And we had one visitor, Haas, who was talking about, training, isn't it important? We drive cars, there's a training requirement. And at the same time, we're talking about constitutional rights. We're making a very, very clear distinction. There is no mandatory training for voting. There's no mandatory training for petitioning your government. There's no mandatory training for lawfully protesting. And so this is a constitutional right. And so the idea that there has to be some, bureaucratic system set up with mandatory training requirements in order to carry a tool, which frankly is very simple to use. And I'm an instructor, and so are you, John. So let's be perfectly honest. And we've had discussions about this, but the biggest thing is this: thousands upon thousands of American citizens have saved their lives and defended themselves with no training.
Zero training at all.
Zero training at all. When you think about the grandma who's had that revolver by her bedside for the last 40 years, and that person comes in to attack her, and she picks it up for the first time and she defends herself. That woman had no training whatsoever. And then we know of the most highly trained, skilled, amazing people, and they make a mistake and they have an accident, right? So their training is no guarantee to make it more safe or less safe. And again, this is about the constitutional right to keep and bear arms and to be able to protect and defend yourself. The other good news is in this research that we've done in support of constitutional carry across the states, the statistical growth in training opportunities is just astronomical. So as an instructor, I am exceptionally excited to begin to start offering modularized and targeted training at far less cost, because it's going to take me far less time to give my students whatever it is that they need. If they need a basic pistol and safety class, well, then I'm going to give them that narrow, specific, defined curriculum. If they need to delve into self-defense law and use of force, then I'm going to give them that module, and it's going to be targeted towards their needs. And again, at a much more cost-effective rate. When you're spending 6 to 8 hours in a classroom learning everything from, what is a trigger and what is a hammer and what is double action, all the way to, under what circumstances are you facing an immediate threat of serious bodily harm, kidnapping, death, or rape, that's a very complicated day. You're really funneling a tremendous amount of information down someone's throat. And we're going to call that training, and we're going to call that effective learning. And those people are just so equipped to be able to, act within the body of the law. We have a lot going on behind the scenes in supportive training as NFOA. I'm not going to spill those beans yet. Those beans are for me to deliver during the hearing itself. But we're really excited because we, as an organization, as a nonprofit, are going to be able to bring training to anyone within the state of Nebraska at no cost on a routine basis. So I'll just answer the mail that way.
Very true.
Trish, something that I'm going to ask of you, I will have kind of a generic opening for the hearing, because same as you, I want to hold my powder and keep it dry for the end, because I'll have the last say at the end of the hearing. So what I don't want them to do is to counter stuff that is that, licky, chewy, good stuff that helps you to win the argument by putting that out there and then them countering it during their discussions. I believe what will come to light between the Lincoln and what we need to do is get the testimony from last year's hearing, because I don't believe they're gonna dust off the same stuff and come back. Now that Lincoln police chief hopefully doesn't make the same comments that if you're concealed carrying in Lincoln, you can't have a magazine in the gun. And I mean, she was so off base, she didn't have a clue what the hell.
No, I hope she's better prepared, because that was a real big disappointment for her and for us to listen to her say it. So
yeah, well, I mean, that's what we're dealing with here. We're not. I think her level of competence is much less than many of the people that are going to be testifying, and that's a sad statement, but it's the reality. She was hired on politics, not on her skill sets as a police officer. But as this goes on, and I'm assuming you're going to stay for the duration of the committee hearing, no matter how many people speak, I need you to take notes, and then before we get to the end, slip me some notes that I can then use for that close, because there'll be stuff you'll pick up on, I won't. And if you get texts from other people, fine too. Doesn't matter to me. I just want to make sure that as we close, we give a complete assessment of all the positive and all the reasons that they need to get that bill out of committee and move it to the floor. We can reset after the committee hearing and prepare for floor debate. Now, that's all on my back then. But the hearing is really everyone's chance to be the second house and say what they honestly feel about the bill. And we know we'll have some crazies come in there. That's the nature of the beast, but that's okay. Most of the time, they're so far out that they help us more than they hurt us, because people go, well, it probably is good that they don't have a gun. Because we have some of what I refer to as the cave people, the Lincoln citizens against virtually everything, that kind of patrol that Capitol looking for some reason to come in and testify against anything good. They'll be the ones testifying against voter ID. They'll be testifying against reducing taxes. They'll be testifying against abortion. They'll find anything possible that they can testify against. But that's just the process. But what we want to do is make sure that we don't forget to include everything positive possible that we can to help this bill get through. Because I honestly believe this is the year, this is our chance. We just can't leave anything on the table.
Agreed. And, one of the things that's interesting about the whole testimony process is, if you're for the bill, you get to go first. If you're against the bill, you get to go second. And if you're neutral, whoever's neutral. I've hardly ever heard real neutral testimony.
No.
But that's one of the challenges. And so, yeah, we'll definitely do that because a lot of times people are speaking from their heart, but they're not speaking from experience or education or learning. They're not familiar with the concepts upon which they're speaking about. And unfortunately, that misinformation, if the senator in the is listening and isn't aware that that's not true, then that can, obviously twist their perspective of our bill. So we will definitely make sure that we identify anything that needs to be clarified or spoken to in the closing.
Got it. All right. Well, I'm making notes now to have Dick Clark go ahead and secure all of the testimony from LB773. And that way we'll be able to go back and look at that. And I think that'll be a treasure trove of stuff for us to then use. And that'll be available, Trish, if you're around the Capitol, or I can have Dick scan it and email it too.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay. Let me make a note to do that because I'm old and I forget stuff.
If you don't write it down, it never happened. I'm with you.
All right. Got it.
Okay, I want to just put this up on screen real quick too from Raylene out there on the Facebook side. This is borrowed from the Texas constitutional carry. The last sentence there: allowing gun owners to carry legally owned firearms without a permit makes victims safer and violent criminals more afraid to cause harm. And that's really what it comes down to. And I can wax rhapsodic on this topic, but like Trish mentioned earlier, we're talking about a constitutionally protected right. Now, there are people that don't think it ought to be, and that doesn't matter. The fact is that it is a constitutional right. And the Bruin decision, especially in Justice Thomas's opinion, said that you cannot treat the Second Amendment as a second-class right. It has the full weight and bearing of any of the other rights. And so if you are thinking that maybe a permitting system is still good on carrying a firearm in public in a concealed fashion, ask yourself this: would you be okay if a permit was required and training and background checks before you had freedom from illegal searches and seizures, which means unless you've got a specific tag on your car, police can pull you over at any point and go through your car whether you like it or not, because you don't have the training or the license needed to avoid such a thing, or to be protected from testifying against yourself, or you don't get due process. You don't get a speedy trial without a speedy trial license. No, nobody would ever stand for anything like that. And we have to stand up and require our governments, our legislatures, our judicial systems everywhere to look at the Second Amendment in the same light as these other rights, that nobody would ever stand for being trampled. And according to Justice Thomas, they have to give the Second Amendment rights that exact same treatment. We've rolled over because we've gotten complacent and we're so used to gun laws. But it's time that we take back a little bit of ground, I think. And it's so important that we point out, even to, again, as Trish said, not every senator is informed on every issue. Right? A lot of people have never thought about it in terms of, well, yeah, I wouldn't want to have a permit before I was allowed in to testify on this bill. That's just a right that we have. I don't need a permit for that. And a right that our Constitution here in Nebraska and the federal Constitution both say is that I have the right to keep and bear arms. And there's no excepts, there's no buts. It's just I have that right. So again, it's super important that all of us remind all of our legislating bodies that this is the case.
Well, and if you read the Nebraska Constitution, they felt so strong about it. It is in the very first paragraph of the Nebraska Constitution. And something I brought up with Dick is I said, Dick, at what point did we make a conscious decision to change that to where we did something that no longer gave you the right to keep and bear arms? And he's like, well, over time, each city comes up with its own ideas on what right is, and next thing you know, we have all these policies. But something I stress to folks too is that we have open carry in Nebraska. So the difference is literally putting your coat on or taking your coat off. One, you're legal, one, you're not. How does that change whether you should be a gun owner or whether or not the community's more at risk? the rules as they are make people more comfortable. I mean, they would make them more comfortable with constitutional carry because it's not as obvious. And, there's certain risks with open carry because if someone is bigger and stronger and they decide they want what you have, there's a possible issue there. With concealed carry, no one knows.
Nope, very, very true. All right, so let me go back through a couple other questions here. And I'm going to put this up on screen because I don't know the answer from Denise over on Facebook. How do we go about showing the number of people from Lincoln that support constitutional carry? How does one even do that? And I don't know the answer. So if anybody, if Senator or Trish, if you have better ideas than I do, please voice those.
Well, here's the beautiful part. We are all parts of different groups, communities. The Nebraska Firearm Owners Association is politically agnostic, right? We're not Democrat, we're not Republican, we're not Libertarian, we're independent because the Second Amendment is for everyone. However, I belong to all sorts of kinds of groups, and I have connections in Lincoln. And so if you have connections in Lincoln to church groups, to political groups, to mom, dad, sports groups, send them our calls to action, forward them our NFOA emails, share our posts on Facebook on your pages, put out your own video. I mean, we all film all sorts of stuff in our families. Put out your own personal call to action. The thing that made the hearing on the assault weapons ban so powerful was literally it was multitudes of people from all corners of the state standing up, making phone calls, writing their emailing their friends and their family, going to speak at events. It was literally just a citizens movement. NFOA definitely had a huge part of that, getting the word out, but it wasn't our success. It was Nebraska's success. And that's what's going to make the difference, is to understand that while it may be difficult to trust me, because I've seen it happen. All it takes is up to 20 to 30 minutes of your time over the next few days before the hearing starts. And you'd be surprised at how many people are going to show up because you made your voice heard. Mm-hmm. That's how you do it.
And just to show you how we're kind of in a hand-to-hand fight on this thing every day. Tomorrow, we will have the rules that are going to be looked at as far as possible changes. Kavanaugh, Michaela, has put in a rule change that would not allow anyone to bring a weapon into the Capitol unless they were law enforcement. So we'll kill that. But just so you understand that is a constant. They are constantly working. And of course, they're coming back down. They're saying that we felt so threatened when all the folks showed up at the Capitol with guns for the red flag and assault weapons discussion. And if you remember right, they had the State Patrol escort them around because they were scared for their lives. And it was all a show. They're very good at these shows. And so you might, if you listen to Lester, hear the debate on that tomorrow. But I plan to kill that early. I'm going to take copies of that first paragraph of the Constitution and highlight and share with all the senators, not just the conservative ones. But that's what we deal with is the loons are out there lurching toward any opportunity to take guns away. And what we're doing, obviously, is giving people the ability to make safer decisions on being able to possess a weapon and not have that become an issue for them to, have some type of a charge brought against you. And if you look at what Dick Clark deals with in Lincoln, there was a lady who was 71 who had a gun in her vehicle, glove box, vehicle locked. Someone broke in, took it. She reported it, and then she was then given a citation. And he's helping her try and fight the citation because that alone would keep her from being able to keep her concealed carry permit. So essentially, by doing the right thing and reporting it, she then was losing her right to be able to keep and bear arms or to even have a weapon. And it's ridiculous that you have laws that if you do the right thing, you do what you're supposed to do. Because if you take concealed carry class, right in there is if you have a weapon stolen, you notify law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
But then if law enforcement then tickets you in a way that then takes away your ability to have the concealed carry, you see that really sad cycle you're in there of punishing the person doing the right thing.
Right.
Okay, a couple other things that I want to get up on the screen here real quick. MJ on the Facebook side, very important question. The law is so gray when it comes to carrying on the reservation. Will constitutional carry solve that at all?
Well, I would think so, because it's going to be for the whole state of Nebraska. Now, of course, where you kind of run into a little bit of a gray area there is, the tribes, to a degree, think of themselves as a separate independent nation. Now, obviously not, because everything that the government has, gives, and does is on the reservation. So, it would come down to probably having to have a discussion with the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, just to make sure that once the law is passed, that they acknowledge that, and that, if they have any issues, they address them then. It should, but after growing up on the reservation, I'm here to tell you, but that truly is a gray area, and that's a hard one. But I think if the BIA was informed that a law was passed by the state of Nebraska and it was the law of the land, that they would then follow it.
All right, and real quick here too, more than one comment out here on this. Can you discuss the NRA breakfast some more? Is it open to the public? And if it is, when and where is that happening tomorrow morning?
Actually, it's not. What it is, it's our chance to get the NRA leadership and senators together in a room and talk about the legislation and the process. For one, we've got pretty limited room. I mean, if we just have the NRA folks and the senators, we've filled the room pretty much. And that part of that's the construction and everything else going on. But this is a chance to take some of the senators that are a little more wishy-washy, not as firm as I'd like to see them, and kind of firm that up. What senators don't like is when they fill out surveys and put something, and then they get forgetful that they maybe put something down. Sometimes it's good to have a chance to get one-on-one, talk about it, and refresh their memory. And now we've looked at everyone who filled out the NRA survey and put in there that they support constitutional carry. Not every one of them signed down as a co-sponsor. Now, that doesn't mean they won't vote for it. So, and a lot of times the freshmen are scared to death. Here at day one, and you got a senior senator coming up and stuffing this in your face and wanting you to sign it. Some of them are just afraid to sign something they don't read. But I made copies and gave some, hoping that would change their mind. Senator Reapy, who is a former senator that came back, he didn't sign, and I had a rather frank conversation with him. Like, listen, I walked in parades, I knocked doors for you, I donated money to you. I said, you're not going to get the police unions to do those things, so just remember that when it comes time to vote for this. And so maybe I'm too blunt with folks on things, but I think that sometimes you need to be, so people get the light bulb to come on and they understand that this is important. This is important as anything I'm going to do this year. And if you're not with me, you better let me know now, because if you do it on a vote and that vote ends up that your number happens to be the one that's 32 and not 33, and we lose the day, I'm probably going to be a little bit angry and hard to deal with for the rest of the time that I'm in this body with them.
Yeah, that's a very, very fair point to make. A lot of us out here that don't deal daily within the halls of the Capitol, there's just a lot of folks that don't quite understand the whole process of how legislation happens. And if senators can't get along and eventually kind of find some common ground on some of these issues, then no bill gets passed, right? So it's super important that you all are able to work together. Even that means, of course, sometimes you have to have conversations with folks you wouldn't normally catch yourself sitting down and talking with, but we appreciate the efforts of all the senators to try and work toward each other, not away from each other.
Yeah, and that's why, at this point, it's a bit of an open book. I think you can take testimony from actually the last 6 years, quite frankly, but, the last couple of years on different gun bills and get a real good idea where folks are. There are a lot of them, though, that are still unknown just where they're going to be. Let's see, who was it last year that left me hanging? Well, Blood was one that voted for it in the first round. And then, did the second. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with some of them blindly do what the unions tell them instead of actually really addressing the law. And, I guess that's the way you want to do it. That's fine. But we maybe had a false impression after the first round that how much support the bill was going to receive. And then as we get to the second round and we peeled off that amendment, then it really turned out to be a whole lot different vote. That's why I just feel much better about this year. It's a clean bill. It says exactly what it's going to do. And, there shouldn't be confusion. You're either with us on constitutional carry and support of the Second Amendment, or you're not.
All right. Do we have anything else that we've missed in the comments or in the questions that you've seen, Trish? I think we've.
I just want to mention Bill Altz had a great suggestion. He was going to go to a city police chief and county sheriff to see if he could get a letter from each of them in support of it. I'll tell you, Senator Brewer is a man without many equal, but he can't do it all. And he can't reach out to every single sheriff in every single county in Nebraska. So if you have a relationship with your local law enforcement, your county sheriff, and you can get a letter from him or her establishing their support for constitutional carry, and then you come to the hearing and testify, and you bring a copy of that letter, enough copies for each of the senators who are on the committee, so you can turn that in to them to make it part of the record, that would be huge. That's an excellent way to show your support and get things done.
Trish, I'm going to get with Tony Baker in the morning, my chief of staff, LA, and see if we can get the name and address of all 93 sheriffs. We might be able to do a cover letter up. If we did it pretty fast, we'd have to pretty much spit the letter out tomorrow and get it out, but provide a return envelope and in a letter, kind of a form letter where they can mark down whether they support or oppose constitutional carry. We might be able to get those out and get them back in time to use those, but that would be a pretty, a pretty positive thing to just drop on the table if you could get most of those 93 county sheriffs. And I think you would get, Lancaster and Douglas, but, I don't know. Aaron Hansen's the new Douglas County Sheriff. I don't know that he's going to work against me. He's not going to work for me. I think he's going to sit on the fence. I'm okay with that. If I could get the two big cities to sit on the fence and let me get if I could get 91 of the outstate ones, that pretty much carries the day there. If the fraternal or the police are not going to go in opposition of it, the state patrol won't go in opposition of it, then it really does just come down to those two police unions, and I think that's manageable.
Definitely.
Yeah, and there's a lot of chatter right now about folks that are willing to reach out to their county sheriff. So yes, please do so. And even if we do start to run out of time, but if we could even get the sheriff to commit to, Senator, would it be best to just have an email sent straight to your office?
Yeah, that's fine. We can collect them there. What we'll do is put that into the official record that is part of that committee process, and then it's there for time and all eternity. part of the formal record on the LB77.
What email address should they send these to?
It is the official email address for the senator, which is.
Do you want me to look you up?
I've got it right here. I'll put Senator Brewer's in the comments on Facebook and YouTube here.
Perfect.
Which is tbrewer@leg.ne.gov. Let's put that up on the screen.
You got her. That's it. And
for any state senator, it should just be their first initial and their last name, correct?
You got it. You got it. And that's just a cookie cutter across. We don't have any senators with the same name. Last year we had Ben Hansen and Matt, but this year they're all the same, all different. So that's pretty easy to keep straight. And I would think that it really doesn't matter whether it's a handwritten note or email, whatever. It can all get dropped into the formal record for the hearing.
All right. So yeah, the more documented support we can get from across the state, the better off we're going to be, especially if we can get that in Senator Brewer's hands by the morning of the committee hearing, which again, if you're just joining us, the committee hearing has not yet been scheduled, but speculatively speaking, probably that first week after Martin Luther King Day. So we're looking at probably, what did you say, the 25th, 26th, or 27th of January?
I think be close to that range. I don't have a calendar handy here, but we'll, as soon as we know, which will be within the next few days, we'll get that out and we can start in things. And if people just absolutely can't, whether it's because of weather, because of mobility or whatever, if you send a letter, the committee clerk will then put that in the record. And at the end of the hearing, it will be read X number of letters of support, X number of letters of opposition, and X number in the neutral position. And if that number is pretty high, then that only helps the cause. And you can send a letter in and still come in and testify, or come in and just be part of the crowd to listen to folks. The Judiciary Committee does have the biggest hearing room. For this one, they may open the Warner Chamber, and it may be done in there.
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know I'm surprised the question hasn't come up yet. Or if it has, and I've missed it, I apologize for the oversight. But in the last 2 years, when Senator Lathrop was Judiciary Chair, we were limited to 3 minutes each in order to speak. Now that's set by the committee chair, right? That isn't necessarily the way that Senator Wayne will do that.
Now, that's true. And if you remember right, I think for the assault weapons and red flag, they went down a minute and a half, which was ridiculous because you barely get yourself introduced. Wayne would not go less than 3 minutes. I'm sure of that. Normally what you do is, if it's a standard bill, it's 5 minutes. If it's a bill of significance that will have a lot of testifiers, sometimes you need to go to the 3 minutes just because of the sheer volume. You'd be there until midnight. We can't go past midnight because we're into a new legislative day. And so we got to stay within the constraints we have. Lathrop just didn't want to listen to people. That's why he went with that.
All right. So once we have the rules that are set by Senator Wayne for the committee, which are across the board, correct, Senator? The way that he does that will be the way that he does all of the hearings. Well,
no, he may go with 3 minute for this. I mean, I'll probably go 3 minute on voter ID and 5 minute for most of the rest of the hearings.
Okay.
But that's okay. You can build your comments around the 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. What we can do then is cue certain senators that sit on the committee to ask follow-up questions. Well, there's no time on those. And Trish, great example. She can't include enough information in a 3 minute opening to really do justice to training. But I guarantee you that there'll be guys that are on that panel or the committee that will have notes saying, "Hey, ask Trish about this," so you get enough information to truly understand it. Then she can expound on it, and they'll leave there understanding what's going on, and there won't be the time restraint.
Awesome. All right. Mm-hmm. All right, so we
So
rolled.
one other
Oh, go
point
ahead.
that just Senator Brewer just reminded me something. So if you belong to a group, or you and a bunch of friends are coming out to testify, one of the best things you can do is sort of split the pie, right? So if you have 5 points that
Mhm.
you really want to hit hard together, well, distribute your points across the 5 of you so that you can get your entire story shared. It is challenging to try to get everything you want on the record and to be heard in a way that you're not speaking so fast nobody can understand what you're saying. So just break it apart into short, succinct, and direct. Then your entire message can be heard. That's a great way to do it.
I agree totally. And if anybody comes from a state that has constitutional carry and they want to testify, please share their experience there, because then that's real world stuff, and it's somewhere where it's worked, and that's going to give folks peace of mind that are kind of teetering on whether or not it's a good idea or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. If you have contacts in any Pro 2A or just grassroots organizations in our neighboring states that would be able to come and testify on some actual experiences that constitutional carry helped out in their state, which is 5 of our 6 neighbors now have a constitutional carry bill passed, including Iowa, and I would think that would rankle a few of our state senators the way that it does most of Nebraska, that Iowa beat us to something else. So if nothing else, senators, pass it because Iowa was first. No, but honestly, having those testimonies, those success stories of
Mm-hmm.
constitutional carry in our neighboring states,
Mm-hmm.
those are great. Just like Trish had mentioned earlier, looking at the research, that statistics show that training goes up when the state mandate comes off of there. And it's just what Trish said. You don't have to spend $200 or more to get a permit like you do now. The average class is 100, and then 100 to the state patrol.
Yeah, you can go to 4 or 5 training sessions for that money,
and you can space them out over what your budget allows. You don't have to pay it all at once.
Yeah.
I have not yet met any responsible firearm owner who doesn't appreciate training. It's time and money. Those are the only 2 factors that ever stop people from getting the training. As a whole, Nebraskans are a responsible crew, right? We know what needs to be done. So let's get this done too.
I will say this, for those of us who like to compete with Iowa, they are now just going through their sanctuary county movement. Yeah, we beat them already. So
that's true. And that was all.
It's exciting to see.
That was
so
all
they're like,
oh,
we need to do what Nebraska's doing, and all volunteers too, which is awesome.
That was all you, Nebraska. We were the cheerleaders, but we didn't make that happen. You did.
Well, Senator Brewer, do you want any final thoughts before we end?
Well, just that I know it's a time restraint to come to Lincoln, to be a part of hearings and all that, but I do not want to look back on this time, this opportunity to get constitutional carry through, and by 1 vote or 2 we end up losing it, and lose the opportunity for maybe as far into the future as we can see, because there isn't those individuals with that burning passion that just want to see constitutional carry through, that will burn their priorities and champion the cause maybe in the future. And so let's not look back on this and regret. Let's look back on it. We took the time. We gave of ourselves for a good cause, and it's for not just everybody in Nebraska, but it's something that will be part of Nebraska in the future. We're changing the law in a very positive way, and so if there's any way, again, you don't have to testify. I know that can be a little mind-numbing to come in and have to sit there, but just presence in the room, presence in the hallway, that's a factor that weighs heavily on these senators as they're trying to decide whether to let that bill go forward or not.
True.
Well,
and I'll say this, like you said, constitutional carry might not be the one thing that you really want pursued with regards to firearm rights and freedoms. But let me tell you this, we get constitutional carry passed, the door is now open. We will have passed the most amazing, constitutionally changing, freedom loving bill in recent history. And from there, precedent has been set, which means 2A is now at the forefront of Nebraska politics, and we can get other bills passed, ones that we've been trying to pass for so long. So get this passed, and then the rest will come.
Well said.
Very true. And remember too that if you are in the Capitol that day, even if you're not going to testify, you can come into the hearing room, sign in with your where you came from, and then whether you are for or against the bill or neutral, and then you can walk right back out of there. But
Yes.
You logged yourself as somebody to be counted, and the more people who sign in as proponents of the bill, in support of the bill, that has a lot of weight too, because I guarantee that is going to be by far and away the longest tally column. But if you're going to show up there, please at least sign in support of the bill, even if you don't intend to testify, so that we can show the numbers.
And if it is a situation, and I'll make that recommendation to the Capitol staff, that we may want to have another committee hearing room on hold and have everything televised into there, and then we have an overflow place to bring folks, and they can still watch the hearing as it's going, in case we do have that many. And what we did with the assault weapons ban is then we brought that sheet down and passed it around the room, and everybody signed it, and that's how we got the 477 or whatever that crazy number was that we had that day. And not all of them signed it that day.
Mm-hmm.
So that will make available. In fact, let me make a note on that. Overflow room. And I'll just simply tell them, listen, we held off last year. We called off the dogs. We're not doing it this year. So just because last year we didn't have the numbers, don't assume that's the way it's going to be this year. We need place for and then as people testify and leave the room, you can filter them out of that overflow room in there to then be in position to speak when their turn comes up, if they decide to.
Absolutely. And again, to paraphrase what Trish had said a few days ago in the Capitol at the rally that you and she were both part of, last time we had people in the hundreds. We would love to see people in the thousands descend upon Lincoln, even if they're not all in the Capitol building. And again, we want everybody to be peaceful, right? Respectful and within the bounds of the law. But at the same time, the show of force of just having Nebraskans, especially, again, as Senator said, we understand it's for some of you, we're looking at 6, 7, 8 hour drive to get to Lincoln. But when you do that and you sign in and you testify and say, I came from Harrison or I came from Benkelman, even if you just came from Eagle, it has a lot of power though. And those of you that are willing to make the drive in support of what you believe in, that action speaks way louder than a lot of the words do.
And if we had those kind of numbers, even if they didn't all speak, there is a high probability that those senators sitting in that room are going to want nothing to do with picking a fight or stirring up folks. If they came all the way to Lincoln and they feel that passionate, there's a pretty much guarantee that bill is coming to the floor. And that's our goal. We get it to the floor, then we have a chance of it moving forward and becoming law. Don't get it out of committee. It's a harder process. We could still do it. We're trying to collapse that timeline so that we can get it made into law and be done with it in mid-February or late February. And then it's just a matter of waiting for the governor to sign it.
So real quick here too, Senator, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but assuming everything goes well and it does move through fairly quickly and the governor does sign the bill, when are we looking at it taking effect?
90 days after the governor signs it.
Okay.
Is the timeline on that? I'd have to double check to see if it doesn't have an E clause because there's no cost with it. So I think that's the timeline we're looking at.
Okay. All right. So we will be able to answer that too as we're talking to folks across the state here this spring as the bill goes through the process. So
add this to the list, and I'll have Dick Clark share that with Trish.
Okay. All right. We'll get some clarification on that and make sure of it. But as soon as we know for sure, then yeah, we'll get that out too, so everybody knows for sure what to expect. And again, then we can cajole and encourage these senators to move this through in a timely fashion. So, all right, Trish, do we need anything else before we wrap this up and give the senator back his evening?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I know time with your family after work is precious. Thank you, Senator Brewer, for joining us. I know you were running from your last gig to this gig and got a busy plate, busy schedule. So we really appreciate the timeliness of you being out here. And just to let everyone know, NFOA, this is our priority bill, constitutional carry. We hit this ground running months ago. We're going to continue to speed it up and add all your voices to ours to make sure that there is no question that this isn't the will of the people of Nebraska to have our rights finally recognized as they should have always been in our state. So appreciate all of you coming out today. If you have questions, please contact us. If John can put our email address out for everyone
It's been
to
scrolling
see.
across the bottom the whole time here if you're looking on the
Perfect.
screen.
Yeah, if
But
you have questions,
it's info at nebraskafirearms.org.
if you have questions about what to testify, how to testify, if you need some facts to share, if you want someone to help you wordsmith so that you can come across as professionally as you may want to, if you've never testified before, we're all about advancing effective legislation and education to make sure citizens can be active. And we want you to have a voice and we want you to be heard. So we're happy to assist. If you're not a member of the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association, join today. It's free. Go to nebraskafirearms.org, nebraskafirearms.org. We just launched a new online community, which we will be posting all sorts of good resources for our memberships to take advantage of. So hope to have you join us.
All right. So again, that email address one more time for any info is exactly that, info at nebraskafirearms.org. Earlier we had put the email address for Senator Brewer up there, but any of the state senators, first initial, last name at leg.ne.gov is the email address to reach out to them. The Judiciary Committee members have not yet been posted on the legislature's website. But as soon as that gets updated, I will make sure that we get that link to that page posted up on our social media as well. So if you're watching on YouTube and you're not getting our emails, if you didn't get one about this and you found out about it otherwise, please email us also at info at nebraskafirearms.org and let us know that you want to be on that list. And if you're on Facebook and you haven't yet followed the page, please do so, because Facebook is the fastest way that we can get info out. The other ways take a little bit longer, but it just takes a few quick minutes to make a post and put it up there, and we'll be working to do that. So again, Trish, thank you very much for helping me out on this tonight. Senator, very much appreciative of your time and the fact that you're like an old bulldog, Senator. You get a hold of something, you just won't let this go. And we like that about you. So thank you very much for that. Know that there are more people than you possibly could count that are behind you on this. And hopefully we can harness all of you out there to help us finally get this one across the goal line. But just remember, especially until this hits the floor in a floor debate, this is not all on Senator Brewer. He can't do this without us. We can't do this without you. Without you guys, NFOA is just 7 people having a board meeting talking about absolutely nothing. What we care about is what our membership wants this organization to be about. So this doesn't happen without you. Nebraskans, you're always willing to come down and argue against a bad bill. How bad do you want this? How bad do you want to roll up your sleeves and be neighbors and all of us work together the way that all of our communities are used to doing it? I came from Kippahaw County. I know what it's like. All right, guys. Thank you very much. We appreciate all of you on behalf of Senator Brewer and Trish and myself, and all of you out there that claim to be our members as well. Have a great night, and let's get this thing done, shall we?